Turning back now to the conflict in the Middle East, where the escalating fighting between the U.S. and Iran is showing no signs of letting up. So overnight, U.S. forces conducted their 10th straight night of strikes on Iran as President Trump vows to make Tehran pay for the recent deaths of American service members in the region. For more on this, we're joined by retired U.S. Army Major and military analyst Mike Lyons. I really appreciate you being here, Major. So I want to start there. You know, we have seen in recent days 3 U.S. service members have lost their lives. In the region, we're learning that 100 service members have been injured just this month. So I think the question is, what is your assessment of how well protected U.S. personnel in the region is?
Well, first, our hearts go out to the families of those lost service members, Lieutenant Fee and Private Gonzalez, air defenders defending, obviously, their weapon systems when they were killed in action. But I can tell you this, protection of the force is a high priority of the U.S. military. It always has been. Having been in combat with American equipment, it's second to none. And so there's 2 aspects of it. There's the tactical side to it, which we're superb at. Our equipment is good. The rehearsals are fine. The medical responses are always good. But then there's the strategic element where the Iranians still have this capability to hit a target 1,000 kilometers away and unfortunately inflict the kind of damage they are inflicting the last day. So again, 2 aspects of it, but protection of the force, always a high priority, and it's something that most soldiers and airmen sailors are very confident with.
One of the things that we've heard from members of Congress, specifically Democrats, Major, is that this is a war of choice that the president chose to launch. When asked about the deaths of these service members, he alluded to the fact that the United States is trying to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. But that is difficult to explain to these families when the goalposts of what this conflict is meant to be have shifted over the course of the last 5 months. As you know, having served in combat, it's the most difficult conversation a commander can have with a family member when you have to call them up and tell them that one of their loved ones has died defending our country, defending our values and our principles. I guess the question becomes, are the deaths of these soldiers, and these are not the first ones that we've lost in this conflict, how do you explain to the American people that they are doing the job that's required when the goalposts of this conflict have shifted so dramatically over the course of the last 4 or 5 months?
No, I mean, all the soldiers and they're volunteers. They all signed up to do this. I think you're correct that the administration has not done a great job communicating what are the objectives here and what we're trying to actually do. It went from a little bit of regime change to keeping them from nuclear weapons. Very clearly, U.S.-Iran, #1 foreign policy failure for this country for the past 47 years. Iran has been at war with Iran, with the United States. We were going to have this conflict at some point, and I think now was the time to have it. This was a bigger conflict in Iraq and Afghanistan. This was more important in the grand scheme of things. So I think the sailors, soldiers on station there know that, recognize that. The administration does have to do a better job of communicating the strategic objectives here, which are right now getting the Iranians back to the negotiation table with the conditions that we want.
Well, so to that point, we had a memorandum of understanding that fell through. What do you think a second deal could look like between the U.S. and Iran, and how effective would it actually be? Because there's so many things, frozen funds, access to nuclear weapons, the Strait, that are still outstanding.
Well, first and foremost, the reason why the first one failed was because we allowed the Iranians $8 billion of assets that they then used and did a little bit of rearming with that, frankly. We think the Chinese gave them air defense systems and the like. So we can't have that happen again. We gave in a little bit too much. The whole first MOU was totally front-loaded. This time, it has to have objectives and teeth in it that make sure that they can't rearm, they can't do things that can hurt Americans, and they can easily walk back out of it like they did with this one. They really didn't abide by it. We decided, the president decided enough was enough. But I think you're going to have to see much more tactical success on the ground, combined with snapback sanctions, combined with economic leverage. You're going to have to see more pressure internally. Right now, the strikes are working tactically, but I don't think the strategic objectives are being accomplished.
Let me ask you about this, Major. Yemen's Houthi rebels have announced that they will impose a blockade on Saudi ships. What does this mean in the grand scheme of this conflict?
I'm not sure that's going to amount to anything. The Houthis don't have a lot of capability. The Israelis took care of them. The Houthis are the last proxy that the Iranians have that could do something like this. And they're talking about a naval blockade. And I ask, with what? We have destroyers and cruisers in that area, too, making sure that part of the world stays safe. If the Houthis decide to get into a naval conflict with the United States, that won't last very well. It won't go very well for them. So I think right now it's still a lot of bluster. You're seeing things come out of Iran that are saying that they're daring the United States, for example, to invade. They're daring the United States to do things. This is kind of the last vestiges of what they're trying to do. But at the end of the day, the Houthis, I don't think they have a lot of capability, and I don't think that it's going to hold up very well.
All right, Major Mike Lyons, appreciate you joining today.